Hello and welcome to this very special show on Bharat Shakti. Whenever the nation is in peril, the armed forces can never be too far away. We are dealing with a crippling and devastating second wave of COVID-19 pandemic. And now the armed forces have sprung into action. They are in the thick of things, be it supplying trained medical personnel, be it flying sorties to supply critical medical equipment from across the world, or even repairing defunct oxygen plants. The military forces are supplying and offering 24-hour service on the ground. To talk more about this, I'm very happy and privileged to have with us Lieutenant General Madhuri Kanitkar, AVSM VSM. She is the Deputy Chief of Integrated Defense Service Medical. And I also have with me Surgeon Rear Admiral C.S. Naidu, who is the Additional Director General Medical of the Indian Navy. I thank you both very much for joining us on this show. I would first go to you, General Kanitkar, and I would like to ask you if you could tell us a little more, give us a little more details on exactly what is happening as far as the military support to this pandemic is concerned.
Thank you, Nilanjana. And it is my pleasure to be here today to reassure the entire nation that the armed forces is here in its full strength to give maximum support. Our leadership has called out to the nation and to the armed forces to help in this time of crisis. So, along with all the healthcare persons who have been termed as the healthcare warriors, we are both healthcare warriors as well as the warriors ready to serve the nation.
Let's get into a bit of the operational details, if I may. Could you tell us a little bit, say, about the availability and supply of drugs and of oxygen?
Definitely, I can sort of tell you about. We are caring in our own hospitals. We have definitely availability of drugs and medicines, healthcare people. For oxygen, we are also dependent on the state authorities to fill up our cylinders and suppliers. However, because of the shortages that are come up, that we've started joining hands to procure our own oxygen generation plants, as well as looking up at other ways of beefing up oxygen supplies. But I think more than me, I think Sudeep would be able to really tell you the logistics that is being supported by the Navy. And we've not been able to have Daljit with us, but the Air Force as well. I think he can cover the part much better. I can probably give you a little more if you would like to know how we would like to, how we are providing care for a huge number of patients across the country.
Right. Ma'am, I'll come to you. I think just let me go across to Naidu. So, first of all, let me ask you, I believe that 98% of the military, especially the medical services of the military, have been vaccinated.
That's absolutely right. The medical personnel were vaccinated first as healthcare workers, and all military personnel were termed as frontline workers. And over 100% have been vaccinated for the first dose, and we are going to complete vaccination of the entire armed forces very soon. After that, we have taken up the vaccination of dependents, ex-servicemen, and we are also aiding the government in vaccinating civilians. As soon as the vaccines become available for the second phase, we will expand our activities.
Point of view that people are struggling. People are struggling when it comes to hospital beds, when it comes to cylinders, when it comes to cylinders, and also when it comes to vaccines. So how is the military trying to help everyone, help the citizens in addressing this problem?
Once we get the doses of the second tranche of vaccines, at the moment, as you know, the 18 to 45 age group is being vaccinated. And in whichever state we have received the vaccines, we have started vaccinating whichever population is dependent on that vaccine center. And as soon as the government supplies us the vaccine, we are ready to expand our role in that.
If I can add, Nilanjana, I think besides this, government is really looking at ramping up vaccination in the remote areas and remote villages. And our leadership has also assured that wherever required, we have our footprints on the ground. We would definitely assist the local administration in taking it, especially to remote areas. I think that's where the armed forces can beef up supply help for the civilians.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the setting up of field hospitals?
Yeah. The armed forces has a capacity to set up field hospitals, but the problem is that we are tuned to set them up for surgical emergencies. I mean, we have a field hospital. Every formation commander in the armed forces has under his command a couple of field hospitals where they can be deployed, set up within 2 to 3 days and made functional. They're a self encompassing entity and are able to function independently as per the requirements of the commanders. So they basically come under the commanders. But having said that, the kind of equipment and the kind of what, our load tables, what they're equipped with, the manpower is more for an operating room, for a field dressing station, because it was for the war wounded and the battle casualties. So that's one aspect. Secondly, I mean, you can definitely say, can they be ramped up to look at handling COVID cases? That is something we would have to look into. But the problem would be manpower restraints. And that's for two reasons. Because in our front line, the borders, where it's the northern front as well as the eastern front, these field hospitals are actually functioning on a day-to-day basis. They're not just there to be deployed. Because our troops are deployed, we don't have hospitals, large hospitals right up to the borders in whether it's Leh, Ladakh or Kashmir and Poonch, all those areas. They're being looked after by these field hospitals at static locations, running units which can move when required. So they're already operationally committed and committed heavily, as you all know. The second aspect is the ones which are sort of in the hinterland, with formations which are there at the hinterland. We have used that manpower to beef up our hospitals as well as all the hospitals and civilians that we are looking after by the armed forces. So at the moment, we are quite stretched in all directions. And as you're aware, we have these large 5 to 900 bedded hospitals in various cities, so which are being completely manned by the armed forces. So we have a limited staff and we are rising up to the occasion. We are doing the best we can, but there would be certain limitations.
Ma'am, I was just, in fact, about to ask you. You said it yourself that you're stressed in terms of manpower. I mean, you have the dual responsibility of operational preparedness, of course, at especially the front areas at the border, as well as providing round-the-clock service for COVID patients, not just for your own staff but also for the civilians. What are the other challenges that you're facing, ma'am?
The other challenges we are facing is while we are running these hospitals in collaboration with our counterparts with the state. So there is a lot of, there are the clinical services we are providing, whereas the states are providing the support services. So whenever at short notice we come together, there's always, the usual storming, forming, norming, but things are being ironed out, and we have daily meetings at the highest level to look into these aspects. And iron out all the problems and get these running. So that's one aspect. The second aspect is because of the shortcomings and shortfall of hands to work in these hospitals, we
Yes.
definitely have problems. And I would again deflect one of this particular aspect as to how we are coming across and bridging that gap. I would like Sudeep to later take that on as to how we found various ways of getting manpower, and so he would explain that. Alongside with that, we are having to take a lot of initiative to handle and look after the welfare of our healthcare workers. So a lot of efforts are being taken for that as well, because we know how stressful it is to work. It is not a war that they fought for, a week, 10 days as we are used. Here is a war which is going on for the last 14 months. It was
Yes.
first one episode of COVID, after which the healthcare workers didn't get a respite because there was so much backlog because of the lockdowns. The people came back to the hospitals. So we continued all the cold surgeries and the workload came on in full force. And even before we could really stabilize on that, came in this bout. So it was like a double whammy or triple whammy, and we are handling all that. So it's very important to handle that effectively, efficiently, and yet caringly.
Absolutely. In fact, ma'am, I'm going to come back and talk to you about the mental health. Your which is your brainchild, Operation Kojit. We will talk about that. But let me come to you, Admiral Naidu. And first of all, if you could tell us, as ma'am was saying, about how you have thought of revamping or getting the manpower together to address this particular crisis that we're dealing with.
And what one must understand is that normal life carries on too. You're getting cases coming for deliveries, you're getting appendicitis, you're getting trauma, road traffic accidents, that is, though it is a lot less because of the lockdowns. So it's very important to have staff who can cater for all these basic and necessary needs of a hospital. So we have divided our assets into fixed assets, those who cannot be moved, and the rest as those who can be deployed. And even these deployable assets, we have divided into two halves, so that a healthcare worker who's fighting COVID doesn't get exposed for more than 2 to 3 weeks before he or she is turned around. So that is the way we've been pulling in people. Second, as you know, COVID, there is a variance in the country as far as the incidence in certain states vis-a-vis other states. So since we have medical formations in states which are not so affected, we're able to pull out more people from there and mix and match, so that at any given time, we're able to help the government wherever the healthcare personnel are required. It's a constant battle. We have to turn around people after 2 to 3 weeks. And even those who are on duty, we ensure that they work a fixed amount of hours. It's very difficult to wear a PPE and sustain yourself for more than 6 to 8 hours, as you can understand.
Yes.
And we ensure that they get a break and they're turned around as and when it's feasible.
If I can
Yeah.
jump in, I would like Sudeep to explain the concept of the battlefield nursing assistant, because the Navy is doing very well in that aspect. So if we can just discuss that.
During the first phase, we realized that the healthcare workers get taxed even in mundane other administrative activities in a hospital. Someone to map the helplines, clear the oxygen cylinders, help with the handling the next of kin, so many other activities which any other person can do. And then within the hospital itself, there are small things like taking a temperature, helping a patient with his bed sheets, helping in the catering of the food, just helping a person walk to the washroom. Those kind of activities can be taken on by anyone, but it takes a little bit of training. So what we did was all our young sailors and officers from the other branches, including technical branches, were given capsule courses over a week in which they were taught everything about patient care, how to measure the vital parameters of a patient, how to doff a PPE, how to wear a mask, how is the handling in a COVID zone to be done, how to take precautions. So this way, the level of their medical knowledge went up, and we have termed them as BFNAs, Battlefield Nursing Assistants. And as the second wave started, we've had a refresher course for them, and they are now being deployed to help our healthcare workers in the hospitals.
What about civilian volunteers? Is there any possibility of getting them to help you? Because obviously we all look up to the military forces, and I'm sure many young people would be willing to do that. Or obviously there's this fear of exposing oneself, but do you think you could get them in as well?
Yes, a number of civilians have volunteered. Ma'am, in the Delhi camp, for instance, you have a number of people volunteering, and they have been allowed.
Great.
They just need to learn the COVID precautions. They need to learn how to wear a PPE and remove it safely, for their own safety, of course. But yes, even in the Ahmedabad camps and the DRDO camp, there are a number of civilians have come forward to help.
Wonderful. That's really good to know. Sir, I'm going to ask you, this is a difficult question. You know, we've seen a lot of visuals of so many funeral pyres burning. People are dying. There are so many deaths. What challenges are you facing when it comes to the burial or the cremation of bodies?
See, the disposal, the cremation, and the burial are well laid down by the MOHFW very early during the COVID phase, and all precautions are taken. And for instance, I can give you the example of Delhi, where in the Brar Square, the crematorium, the station headquarters here has streamlined everything, right from arranging the ambulance to the religious personnel to whatever else is required for the cremation or burial. It has all been streamlined. It's at a fixed rate. A person pays upfront on a known scale, and things are done smoothly. If this model was followed everywhere, I'm sure it would be very, very feasible and smoothly done without hurting the sentiments of anyone. It's a very delicate moment when someone has gone to bury or cremate a near and dear one, and all sensitivities should be looked into.
Right. Ma'am, let me now talk about, sir has in fact laid the ground for, the mental health, the emotional health of people, not just people who have survived COVID, but people who have lost their near and dear ones. There's a lot of grief, a lot of suffering everywhere. So what are you doing, and what have you thought of in terms of the mental health? Because that is one aspect that is not really addressed very easily, especially in India. What are you doing regarding the mental health of people?
Yes, I think you touched the thing extremely well, that there are two groups. One is reaching out to the people who are actually losing their people every day we do see. And I think treating that with utmost sincerity, utmost compassion is required. And actually, we do need professional counseling and a bereavement service, which is very streamlined, and we are trying to do it in our armed forces hospitals. But I think this is where NGOs, and this cannot be left to only the medical professionals. And I think even in the civil hospitals, I think we need NGOs. And there are a lot of, while you see the pyres burning and you feel so bad about it, we also hear so many wonderful stories of humanity and kindness, where people unknown are coming forward and helping such. I think it's important to showcase those and discuss those, because that brings in hope. And, let's everyone get over despair and think positively. I think we have to look at those aspects. In our own hospitals, yes, we try to, have these services streamlined. And initially, we did not have so many cases, so we were handling it all alone. But this name Ko-Jeet came in because we've really jumped in it as a huge, not just Jeet over COVID, but a huge cooperative group. So you see, today Sudeep and me are sitting looking as if we are the same. Otherwise, I'd be in green, he'd be in white, the Air Force wouldn't bleed blue. But we're all wearing one. We're all just having the single thought of to do best. And in that, we are being supported very strongly and by our leadership from the arms, whether it's Army, Navy, Air Force, all of them. And we are getting support of these officers to take over, whether it's communication. I mean, patients don't have problems or any complaints against doctors. It is these ancillary services. And I think in that communication, when a patient gets admitted, firstly, he would like to know whether there's a bed available. Second communication is when a relative gets admitted, everyone is so scared, so worried. They need to be in touch. And I think they need to be in touch and be informed, as well as the patient have an opportunity to connect with his near and dear ones, because that is what gives him the enthusiasm when he's in a ward of sick patients, himself anguished, breathing, high liters of oxygen. He needs a kind word. He needs that, caring words from his relatives. So I think this is a very important aspect which we need to address. And the second part that you said for our healthcare workers, having realized that we are creating two services which are there. One is, we're calling it this, we have our telemedicine service called Sehat for the armed forces and the veterans. Especially for the healthcare workers, we've created a group of it called Sehat Sathi. And this Sehat Sathi is being run by our veteran psychiatrists, who are trained people who, and our healthcare workers have been given the opportunity from the, their own rooms, their own place of where they are kept in quarantine because they're working with COVID. They're almost in a bubble whole day. From there, they can reach out and talk to these people. So that's one aspect. And besides that, we're also launching another called Sehat Sahayata. In Sehat Sahayata, we are specially reaching out to young women and girls who have additional problems, because there's no time to, normal workplace, you have various, for women workers, our nursing officers, our young lady officers, they probably feel even more there are gender difficulties. So to understand those, our senior officers' wives and some of our senior lady of serving doctors who are not on active COVID duty, they would be the other end, available as a line to just chat up with a younger sister. So these are two schemes we've launched. Besides, every service headquarter has brought out its own SOPs, the Air Force, the Navy, the Army. We have the helplines, but these are more one-on-one. So while we are ruling this war and marching on with our head, we are also leading it with our heart.
Yes, that's so good to know, ma'am, and that gives a lot of hope and optimism in these very bleak times. Let me end by let me ask the last question to you both. I will first start with Admiral Naidu. Let's talk of prognosis. How do you see the pandemic? How do you see the response to the pandemic overall? Not just military, but overall response playing out over the next 3, 6, and the next 12 months. Because there's also there have also been reports of a third wave coming in, which is likely to infect children much faster. So, what do you have to say to that, sir?
See, in the beginning, when COVID first started, I can be frank and say that none of us knew where it was heading. We didn't know what India's status was. And if you see purely statistically, I think with the government leading, we did a fairly good job in the first wave. As far as in comparison to any other advanced country goes. There was a lot of public involvement, knowledge, and there was a very good response. The second wave, of course, has come as a bit of a shock. But what it has taught us, we are going to get over that. I'm sure we're going to win this. And what it has taught us is that we are ready now with capacity building in case of a third wave. Also, the vaccination is taking off. A large number of people are now completely enthused. Initially, there was a little vaccine resistance, I would say, but that's over now. You see people lining up for vaccination. And once the vaccination is complete, I'm sure that we'll be able to battle the third wave on a much better footing. At the moment, there is very good capacity building going on. There's very good awareness. And there are so many plus points. all the migration which we saw in the first phase, the loss of jobs, all those are over. We no longer talk about that. Initially, there was a shortage of PPEs and sanitizers. We no longer talk of that. We've been faced with an
Right.
oxygen problem, which we are getting over now. So I'm sure the future is brighter than what we have seen, and we will fight this.
General Kanatkar, if I may just ask you, the India has rejected the United Nations offer of an integrated supply chain of essential COVID-19 materials. What are the merits or demerits of that decision?
I don't think I'm in a position to really, because these are decisions which are taken with a lot of brainstorming by a lot of senior agencies which are looking at all the geopolitical issues related to this. But what I do see is a very, very positive thing that we have become Atmanirbhar. And it makes me so proud that whereas we started off this without no one, I think today, even the child's vocabulary has a PPE and a sanitizer and everything, and there's availability in plenty. This wave, though it really came as a tsunami, we
Yes.
haven't need to look up to anywhere for our basic PPEs or sanitizers. Yes, the only problem has been oxygen and a little bit of this thing of medications, because we didn't expect it to be so huge. But I come to all your presentations with a very positive attitude, and in that I think it's important. I see already that the worst is there, and I already see us improving. I see this spanning out in a positive manner, that the worst is in some parts, like we are seeing Maharashtra, especially Mumbai, Pune, where the wave is coming into control. Delhi seems to also be stabilizing. So you
It's
get
plateauing.
hit hard. Yes, you get hit hard. But it's like, there's a tsunami wave, or there's a wave coming over you, and you hold on and you hold your breath. You let that pass, and you come out feeling, and you have bright sunshine.
The virus caught us a little when our guards were down, because after the first wave passed away and things started coming under control, we started enjoying and meeting with. That's a human nature. So I think this has taught us that with coronavirus, you can't let your guards down. So we would need to ensure and stress on continued use of masks, your hand sanitizing, keeping distances, not getting together in large numbers, especially indoors in crowded places. So these are aspects which we'll have to take care of. But more important than that, what is the armor? I mean, you talk all the military in, the only armor we have is immunity. So two things that can be done is ramp up vaccination, ensure everyone is. Look at the success that Sudeep told you. Most of us, since almost 99% of our troops are vaccinated, we've not had a single death in a serving soldier who's fully vaccinated. So this is what we'll have to ramp up. And we'll have to do sero surveys to see that our antibody levels are maintaining. Because
Yes.
the virus mutating and the antibodies levels going down, it comes and hits you like it was all starting once again. So this is the second lesson. Third is a continued lookout on mutations and the genetic variations, and what are the variations which are of interest, which have to be followed up. And finally, I think we need to have a capacity building. If you had enough beds, enough oxygen, you are not worried. I mean, if you have the whole division there and there was a platoon coming, we'd attack it. But problem is, because you have a platoon and this little RNA virus has come like one big, huge army at us. So therefore, I think ramp up and create our resources is the final. I think this is something. And my last message would be, let's look out and care for our children. Because the vaccine has not been given to children below 18 years, but hopefully the studies would come in. And once we finish with that, we'll start ramping up and improving their vaccination. But having said that, we'll also start preparing and keep our pediatric wards, our pediatric intensive care units, all of them prepared. They would anyway be a national resource. So I think these are some of the steps. I'd like to end on a very positive note, because together we will win.
So the military forces, all three arms, the Indian Army, the Indian Air Force, as well as the Indian Navy, are on a war footing. They are in the thick of action, and they're providing 24-hour round-the-clock service to citizens and personnel alike in battling COVID-19 wave 2. And as General Kanitkar said, as Admiral Naidu said, we are prepared for the third wave. Things have already started getting better from the first wave, at least in terms of certain things like sanitizers are concerned. Yes, we have the challenges of oxygen. We have several challenges to face, but we are generally learning and we are improving ourselves as a country, and our medical response is also only going to improve. So thank you very much, both of you, for giving us time and for talking to us. And I do hope that this message, ma'am, that you have sent out regarding immunity, regarding staying safe, regarding being mindful of what havoc this virus can create, I think that is really important. And also taking care of one's mental health, another very important aspect that you talked about, both of you. Thank you very much for joining us on this show. I request all of you to send us your feedback about this show, and please log on to our website, subscribe to our YouTube channel, like and subscribe to all our other social media platforms. Thank you very much for watching Bharat Shakti, and keep watching Bharat Shakti.